wholesale oil prices weren't going up quite as much as petrol prices were going up. And when oil prices went down, hang on a second, the petrol price isn't going down as well. So their report found the supermarkets, which used to be the kind of the price leaders, they would always undercut the sort of traditional forecourts. They used to make around about £2 of profit every time we filled up our car.
Right.
They're now making over £5, or they were between 2019, 2022. It's been this huge increase. There's £900 million of extra money the supermarkets are making. They just decided, hey, we're not making as much profit maybe on the bread and the milk. Let's make more money on the petrol. So the competition authorities have now said, we'll have an app. This is going to solve everything. We'll have an app. We'll force the supermarkets on a daily basis to record their petrol prices. They'll all get fed in to a central database. We will then give that information out to people who want to run apps. It can be on your sat-nav, and you can find the cheapest petrol, and that should hopefully drive down petrol prices.
Is this a particular issue with the supermarkets about fuel, or is it more widespread with the supermarkets? Because my understanding of the supermarkets was actually this was a very competitive business in which margins have generally been pretty low, profit margins, and because it was all about getting lower prices for consumers trying to compete. But has that changed?
Well, so the CMA, the competition watchdog, is looking into grocery prices, and most experts think they're going to struggle to prove that the supermarkets are profiteering, because the moment that Aldi and Lidl became really big, it just made it so much more competitive, and everyone is trying to beat Aldi and Lidl on prices. So the supermarkets, as a general rule, have cut prices. I know people won't think that because their shopping basket is so much more expensive, but in relative terms, they are making far less money than they used to.
So what's
petrol.
gone on?
So petrol is all to do with Asda.
But was the petrol thing done because they were not making money on food, therefore they decided...
Well, they would argue that's exactly what's happened. Why aren't we allowed to make profit? We used to make basically very little profit on petrol, and it was all to do with Asda, and Asda was not owned by its current owners, who happen to also own lots of petrol stations. So we got an issue there, and they're owned by private equity with a huge amount of debt they've got to repay. They used to make very, very little money on petrol, and wherever there was an Asda in the country, all the other petrol stations and the supermarkets forced to cut their prices, because you just couldn't... If you wanted to compete with Asda, you had to sell cheap petrol. Asda decided we will no longer sell as cheaper petrol. Now, they would argue that petrol's still very cheap at Asda, but in relative terms, it's just gone up. And then, interestingly, all the others, why didn't they try and compete? Why didn't they think, well, if Asda's not cheap, why don't we cut? They all drifted up their prices. So the effect is we, the driver, lost out.
How will an app help?
Well, it has worked in other countries. So Austria has one, Australia has one. If you go in France or anywhere in Europe, you drive down the motorway or any main road, you get those billboards, and it says, you know, next petrol station, it gives you the exact price in 10 miles, 15 miles, 20 miles, and you can see, oh, if we hold on for 20 miles, we'll get dirt cheap petrol. We don't have that in Britain. If you have it on a phone, on an app, in your car, you go, oh, where's the cheapest petrol? And it has proved to work, actually. It will just encourage, if you have to report it every day, and if you're the most expensive petrol station, you're going to lose money.
And, OK, so, but how will it drive it down? Why wouldn't, you know, a forecourt say, oh, well, they've got it up at that price over there, so we'll have it up at that price over here?
Well, there are quite complicated mechanisms to stop that happening, whereby you only report the cheapest ones, not the most expensive ones. But it has been proven. It's the same, you know, it's the whole kind of, dare I say, Martin Lewis effect that happened in all sorts of areas of consumer life. We have comparison sites for all sorts of things, for insurance, for banking, and you can see where the deals are. Weirdly, with petrol, we just don't have it. There is actually an app at the moment, but it's independent. It's up to drivers to report the prices.
Yes, I can do that on my navigation app. It will say what the price of petrol is in various different places.
The interesting thing, though, is if you're filling up your car, it's easy to decide this week I'm going to fill it up in Asda, but next week I'll go to a different retailer.